Creating products that work well and sell like hotcakes can be a hassle. In fashion, you have to rack your brain and come up with successful designs that people love. In other industries, you have to create ingenious products that meets a real need. In other words, a solution to a problem that customers face on a daily basis. In short, you have to find a way to give your product some utility or at least meaning in the hopes of selling them. That's the recipe for success for most businesses, but others like MSCHF have decided to break free from this rule and instead sell products that serve absolutely no purpose. These are not products that are presented as solutions but end up being useless. As many failed startups have shown, no, these are products designed and created to be completely fraudulent. Whether they are purely useless, absurd, or completely improbable is the very strange but apparently very profitable positioning of MSCHF. You've probably already heard of them thanks to or because of their Jesus or Satan sneakers for over $1,000. Or more recently with the big red boots for $600, but MSCHF is not a brand specializing in absurd sneaker concepts. In reality, they dabble in everything and anything, well, mostly anything. So what is MSCHF really? How do they convince thousands of people around the world to whip out their credit cards and buy such absurd and useless products, especially at such high prices? Who's behind those 5 letters that turn the internet upside down every time they announce a new drop? These are certainly questions you've asked yourself before, and luckily you're about to find out everything today.
Hello there.
This is a new video. We absolutely had to dig deeper and explain what MSCHF really is. But first, we have to thank you for the 1,000 subscribers. The next step is 10,000, so you already know what to do. Anyway, let's get back to MSCHF, the strange company that nobody really understands. For some, it's simply indie sneakers. For others, it's a bunch of completely crazy crackheads who have gone a little too far in their delusions. No one really seems to understand who they are or what their goals are. And yet, even though you might think that it's a crazy project that is completely far from what a profitable business should be, it is indeed a real business. And one that has still managed to raise funds with real investors, investing real tens of millions of dollars in the startup. So to understand where all the hype around MSCHF comes from, whether it's from the general public who are interested in their projects, from those who are ready to buy their nonsense, or from those investors who see them as a gold mine, we'll need to, as usual, provide some context on MSCHF, but also on its founder. Gabriel Whaley is the guy behind all these improbable products, and what's even more improbable is his path before creating MSCHF. At first, he was just a university student, and contrary to what one might think, his studies were not in design, marketing, or computer science, but in philosophy. That did not stop him from dabbling in a lot of things that had none to do with philosophy. Whether it was creating applications, which were already huge trolls at the time, writing some articles for BuzzFeed, or even creating a charity organization to allow the less fortunate to play soccer by paying for their membership fees with food while also helping the even less lucky people by redistributing the collected food.
That's a great idea.
Well, he was a young man among many others who was very active and involved in many things alongside his studies. He gained a bit of notoriety before MSCHF by creating dumb apps like Infinity Text Progress Prank. It's an application that allowed you to send a looping GIF over iMessage to make it look like you were typing a message for hours on end, and I do mean hours.
That's so funny.
He embarked on numerous small projects of this kind until 2016 when he created MSCHF, which presented itself at the time as a marketing agency and a collective of artists. Yeah, that was back in the day, because today MSCHF has completely changed its direction. At the beginning, their main sources of revenue came from their marketing agency activities. They even worked with big names like Target and Casper, yeah, the mattress brand. But their first true artistic projects would be launched 3 years later, and the first one was called The Persistence of Chaos, an old 2008 laptop filled with iconic viruses that had completely sabotaged the economy. For example, the I Love You or So Big virus, which together caused tens of billions of dollars in damage to the global economy. And they started off strong with the virus-infested computer as their first project or artwork. Call it what you will, sold for the modest sum of $1.3 million.
Wow.
So what Was it some kind of shady deal like we often see behind the insane prices of contemporary art? I don't know, but one thing is for sure, they did not stop there. In the same year, 2019, they released Puff, the Squeaky Chicken, a weed-smoking bong mixed with that plastic chicken that makes weird noises when you squeeze it. And it was actually a big hit that made lots of noise. In fact, it sold super well. The joke was that when you smoked with it, it made a funny sound. That was pretty much the early days of MSCHF. They had these wild projects that they first sold as works of art to make it sound legit. And then they started selling products for stoners. Apparently, that was the audience most likely to buy into their crazy ideas. And they're even open about the fact that they're selling bullshit. That's literally what their name means. But even from the start, MSCHF had some pretty genius moves. For example, in 2020, they bought a Damien Hirst artwork for $30,000. It was just a big panel with 80 different colored dots. What a ripoff, right? But they did even better on the scam. They cut up each dot and sold them for $480 a piece, and they sold out. That made them more than $40,000, but that is not all. They sold the rest of the artwork at an auction for $260,000, bringing their total to $300,000. They literally made 10 times their investment by selling a piece of art as a bunch of separate parts. The team grew over the years and the projects got more and more absurd. Like the blurred banknotes you've probably seen before, or the cuss collar, a dog collar that spits out insults every time the dog barks. Now, thanks to them, you could be walking down the street minding your own business and have a dog dissing your mom.
Speak.
Fuck!
Good boy.
We're not going to go through all of them since they've had so many projects like this, releasing a new drop every 2 weeks. And maybe that's one of MSCHF's little issues. Being constantly flooded with new projects and rapid drop strategies unfortunately means they don't have time to capitalize on their projects that could make a lot of dough. That's why they created Circle Global, a site that sold their most popular products under a different name, just so they wouldn't ruin the MSCHF hype. But unfortunately, the site hasn't been accessible for a while now, probably because the deal was leaked by CoffeeZilla. But MSCHF isn't just about physical products, otherwise the pace of a new drop every 2 weeks would be totally unattainable. They also make apps. For example, they collaborated with Mr. Beast to create a game that took the concept of his videos. You just had to put your finger on the screen and the last user to remove their finger from the app would win the jackpot. They even created a fund. Well, they sold us Times New Roman, but slightly larger. They probably weren't too inspired by that drop. They also created a Google extension to help people watch Netflix at work by disguising it as a Zoom meeting. They launched a fake marketing campaign by paying people to criticize multinationals. And they came dangerously close to legality by creating a fake restaurant that allowed political donations to be disguised as meal expenses. In short, MSCHF is really anything and everything, sometimes completely free projects, other times projects that made them lose money, and more rarely very profitable projects. Among the company's profitable projects are mainly those that resemble raffles, games of chance, or kinds of jackpots, such as their video game Tantan, where you had to pay $10 to play but the last surviving player won the entire jackpot. There was also their other collaboration with Mr. Beast, where you paid $35 to buy a Lamborghini. But the catch was that you did not know exactly what you were going to receive. It could be a figurine, a mini car, or a real Lamborghini. Of course, there was also the collaboration with Casey Neistat, where they sold thousands of keys. But there was only one car somewhere in the States, and you had to find it to be able to use it. Anyway, there has been lots of projects just like this to make some money, so we're not even gonna go through all of them. In my opinion, a big part of their profitability will also come from projects related to sneakers. That's probably why they'll create an Insta page dedicated to it. They will make a splash with the Jesus shoes first, which will still go somewhat unnoticed and was originally meant to denounce how everyone's doing collabs these days. So why not collab with Jesus? Of course, then the Satan shoes with Lil Nas X would make a lot more noise, and will even have a lawsuit from Nike, who did not want to associate with this crazy crazy idea. From there, they'll launch some pretty weird sneaker projects. Whether it's the Gobstomper collab with Jimmy Fallon, the Wavy Baby with Tiger, or all the attempts to diss Nike with twisted Air Force Ones or Scotch tape. The most improbable ones are definitely their over $400 braces, their upside down wearable sneakers, and of course the big red boots that literally took over the internet. This pair is probably the biggest troll on the internet. They invested in dozens of ultra popular influencers to showcase this giant piece of plastic. And honestly, I couldn't tell you if they were profitable on this one, but what's for sure is that propaganda worked since 40% of you copped a pair. That is really crazy, and most of you approve of the concept, at least for decoration, but still a quarter of our subscribers are crazy enough to wear this thing seriously. As a result, they sold a lot, apparently despite its $350 price tag plus fees that could make it more than $600, especially with an 8-week delivery time. The funny part is that by the time people receive the pair, the hype will have already passed, since it was a completely artificial hype pushed by MSCHF's marketing. Today, nobody even cares about the pair anymore, and we're already on to the next one, which is even worse. I actually think there are probably many people who regret their purchases. This drop was almost a social experiment, and it also shows us a facet of MSCHF, the desire to criticize consumerism by inciting useless consumerism, or to criticize capitalism by reusing all its codes and worse vices. In reality, let's not kid ourselves. This is a truly fraudulent company that could only exist in the US in the 21st century. They only exist in a very specific context, and despite all the hype and media coverage around MSCHF, I'm not sure they're as profitable as they do seem. That's probably why they need to find investors to inject money into their business. Most of their products tend to flop in terms of sales. Others were not even designed to make money, and they say themselves they're still in a phase where they primarily try to create a brand that people appreciate more than monetizing products. Except for a few products that did very well, and their projects that are actually mostly gambling games or pools, it does not seem as profitable as one might think, even if they're certainly not to be pitied. We can see some resemblance to Demna's Balenciaga, where they create an enormous amount of absurd products just to get people talking, and it works. Thanks to their pair, sneakerheads really see MSCHF in a positive way. Personally, I think the concept is fraudulent, but still pretty funny. But what about you? Now that you know all about MSCHF, what do you think about them?
When I perform, you